What if the biggest threat to LIV Golf was never the PGA Tour? What if it was always the math? Because right now, behind the prize checks and the private jets and the guaranteed contracts, something is quietly unraveling. Emergency meetings, deleted interviews, players and vendors who haven't been paid, and the one question nobody inside that league wants to answer out loud. What happens next? To understand where LIV Golf is right now, you have to understand what it promised. When the league launched in 2022, it did not just enter professional golf, it detonated inside it. The contracts were obscene by any measure. Guaranteed money worth $100 million, $150 million, some reportedly pushing past $300 million, all paid up front, before a single competitive round had been played. Private jets, reduced schedules, no cuts, freedom from the grind that had defined tour life for decades. The pitch was simple. Saudi Arabia's public investment fund had nearly $1 trillion behind it. Running out of money, players were told, was simply not a realistic concern. But here is what nobody said out loud during those early signing announcements. Money without a business model is not permanence. It is a countdown. The numbers that have leaked out are almost impossible to believe. LIV was spending $100 million every single month, not per quarter, not per year, every single month. Television deals collapsed or dramatically underperformed. Sponsorships that should have followed the money simply did not arrive. Their American TV deal produced viewership figures that some analysts described as resembling late-night infomercials, sometimes fewer than 300,000 viewers nationwide, while PGA Tour events were pulling millions. By most estimates, LIV was bleeding between $200 million and $400 million every single year. There was no plan B, no path to self-sustainability, only the assumption that the money would keep coming. That assumption is now being tested in the most serious way possible. Meanwhile, the Saudi war with Iran changed everything almost overnight. Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz. Saudi oil exports dropped nearly in half. The Public Investment Fund, the entity absorbing every dollar of LIV's losses, suddenly had far bigger problems than a golf league that could not fill television screens. The Public Investment Fund's resources are vast, but they are not bottomless. A destabilized Middle East has a way of concentrating minds about where money actually goes. LIV Golf, which had been promised funding into the 2030s, suddenly found itself in a very different conversation. And then came Masters Sunday. While Rory McIlroy was making history at Augusta, becoming a back-to-back Masters champion in front of the entire golf world, LI5 executives were quietly told their positions were eliminated. Not at a press conference, not at the end of the season, not with any kind of dignity, on the most important day in golf. In private, with no warning. The symbolism is almost too perfect. The man who stayed loyal to the PGA Tour, who defended it publicly when others were cashing Saudi checks, won his second consecutive Masters, while the league that tried to dismantle professional golf was quietly being dismantled itself. Days later, LIV held a tournament in Mexico City. The media center closed without explanation. Press conferences were canceled. Sergio Garcia looked directly at reporters and said, "Honestly, you know how these rumors are. That is not the answer of a confident man." Then came the interview that disappeared. LIV CEO Scott O'Neill sat down on camera and was asked directly about future funding. He had previously claimed LIV had funding secured into the 2030s. Now his answer was different. He said funding is secured through this season. After that, he said he has to work like crazy to keep it going. The interview was deleted from social media within hours, but the internet never forgets. To understand why this collapse feels so final, you have to understand what was supposed to save LIV Golf. The merger. In 2020, LIV announced they were exploring a combination, a resolution to the war that had split professional golf in two and left players, sponsors, and fans confused about where the sport was headed. For a moment, it felt like a solution. It wasn't. Deadlines were missed. Negotiations collapsed. The United States government opened antitrust investigations. Trust evaporated on both sides, slowly at first, and then all at once. PGA Tour players who stayed loyal felt betrayed that their leadership was even sitting at the table. LIV players who had hoped a merger would restore their major exemptions were left waiting for a deal that never came. That failure mattered more than most people realize, because as long as a merger was possible, LIV had a story to tell, a future to point to, a reason to keep spending. Once that door closed, the math became impossible to ignore. $5 billion spent. No fan base, no television numbers, no path to profitability, no merger. And now a war in the Middle East is draining the very fund that had been absorbing every loss since day one. The question was never whether LIV Golf could win. The question was always how long the people paying the bills were willing to lose. And that answer is now becoming very clear. Here is what makes this truly uncomfortable. The players who signed with LIV Golf were told they were buying freedom. What many of them got instead was a different kind of trap. Without official World Golf Ranking points, which LIV Golf only began receiving in 2026, their global standing had been quietly eroding for years. Major exemptions disappeared. Contracts that had seemed like safety nets began to feel like walls. Brooks Koepka saw it coming earlier than most. He left in January, absorbed the financial penalties, and returned to the PGA Tour before the walls came down. Koepka always plays the long game. Patrick Reed did the same. But Jon Rahm is a different story. He left the PGA Tour as the reigning Masters champion, world number one at the absolute peak of his career, for a reported $300 million. He has struggled in majors since. He missed the cut at this year's Masters entirely. Without LIV, the road back comes with conditions and penalties that would have been unthinkable 2 years ago. Bryson DeChambeau also missed the cut at Augusta. At 32, he still has time, but the window is not open forever. The younger players face something harder still. Years of missed ranking points, major exemptions gone, careers sitting on decisions being made not on a fairway, but in a boardroom in Riyadh. That is the panic nobody is saying out loud. The players who are worried cannot say they are worried. Admitting it would accelerate the very crisis they are trying to survive. LIV Golf is not officially finished. The 2026 season continues. The CEO says everything is fine, but executives are looking for what reporters are now openly calling life rafts. Leadership was informed their jobs were gone on Masters Sunday. Players and vendors have not been paid, and the fund that promised permanence into the 2030s is now redirecting toward domestic priorities. LIV Golf was built to disrupt everything. It never built a plan for when reality disrupted it back. The players who joined were promised they were escaping a system that put the institution above the individual. What some of them are now quietly discovering is that they may have traded one institution for another, one that is less visible, less accountable, and with far less interest in the long-term arc of their careers. The real question was never whether LIV survived its war with the PGA Tour. The real question is whether the dream survives reality. And right now, nobody inside that league has a clean answer. If you want to stay ahead of everything happening in professional golf, subscribe now. New videos every week, and we are just getting started.